momentary thing. It just says sending data. So weird. Yeah, I try to come back on. Twitch is good. Really, what else matters? It's true. Facebook is fab. Everything's in a rotation. Natural good looks, or unless you are 100, unless it's to repair a health issue. Breast, small, medium, big, all good. Yeah. Well, that's not my point. That's your personal choice. That's up to you. But breast implants are aesthetic. They are not, like, you don't look at a woman with giant breasts and go, she can lift heavy things. Whereas a woman with small breasts, you go, she obviously can't lift anything heavy. It's, in some ways, it's the exact opposite, one would think. But when it comes to pectoral muscles especially, or in some cases, I guess they do some bicep stuff, which is just mainly, it's that synthol stuff. It's gross. It's so stupid. That, like, who wants useless muscles is my point. One of the best reasons to maintain a certain level of fitness, besides not having anyone else have to be responsible for you in an emergency, which is the main reason I do it, is that you're useful in an emergency. Hey, guy, this tree was struck by lightning and fell on our neighbor. Everybody come over and help us lift it off them. Imagine standing there going, I would, but all my muscles are fake. They're not actually muscles. They're just, I had inner tubes, and they inflate parts of them, and I stick them in there. I have a little pump in my armpit, and I have to go like this, and my chest gets bigger. Like, it's ridiculous. Does Twitch have a Google Play app? I think so, yeah. Yes, they most certainly have. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yes, ab implants. Again, ridiculous. Do the sit-ups. It will happen. Yes, fake calves, like all that stuff. I don't get it. Because, again, women can't do push-ups and make their breasts bigger. You know what I mean? Like, it's a naturally occurring fat deposit. It's part of your body. It's determined mostly by genetics, some by diet, and a mixture of the two. But men can, muscles you can work out and make bigger. If you want them bigger, then get at it. They will grow. Yes, you do lose muscle mass as you age. However, it's still, like, that's in comparison to the other people too. So, like, you can still do. I mean, there are dudes with, like, they're racked dudes that are in their, like, 80s who work out. It's possible. Honest to God, it's work you can do, and your body will respond. There are female parts that do not respond to exercise to make them bigger, as it were. Again, quite the opposite in some cases, right? We must. Right, exactly, Jody. This kind of thing, whatever. Yeah. Finger implants. There you go. I kind of do too. I got that, I got 3 screws in that finger. Look at that guy. Look at that. There you go. But, totally useful. Still a great finger. This one right here. Yeah, it's got 3 screws diagonally and 1 right down the center. You can touch the point on it. If you're really nice to me, sometimes I'll let you do it, but it hurts. I can feel it. Boink, boink, boink. Yeah. Thanks, Jen. Apparently Pauline doesn't agree. Building your pecs doesn't help women's breasts. This is true. Right. But it can take your eyes off them if that's the issue, I suppose, if that's your thing. But pectoral muscles stops them from falling to your knees. All right, there you go. Either way, exercise good. I think we can agree on that. That's the important thing. Hey, okay, good. YouTube's back for most people. Back is full of screws and rods. Yeah. Summer and I have a good friend whose back is that way, and she has to deal with it all the time. And so for her, at some point, she has to modify what she does to exercise to take that into account. And she's incredibly fit. Can she get fit the same way other people do? Can she go to like a, get a Peloton or go to a spinning class? No, not really. So she had to find another way to do it, and she can't do certain yoga poses, and that stuff is just not possible. So you have to find a work around it, and that's just life, Terrific posture, though, sure. I think it would just sag and fall. Yeah. My back is mostly fused, so no more yoga for me. Well, I mean, yoga, should be body specific. You do up to what your body can do comfortably, and stretch to the limit your body can comfortably, and no more, because yoga, the word means unity, if I'm not mistaken. And the idea is that you're supposed to be aligning your breath and your body and your thoughts together. It's not just a stretching for stretching's sake thing. And like hot yoga and all that shit, while it can be fun in theory, is a little ridiculous to do all the time. I think that's something you should cycle in, like sauna therapy and steam and that stuff, which is all great for you. But not every single day, I would think. I have 6 titanium 3.5-inch screws in both ankles. Damn, Steven. What's up, RoboCop? Thanks, Jane. I'm glad to be back. I basically had to turn off YouTube and turn it back on again. As sad as that is, it's exactly what worked. Hot yoga is the one with the hot chicks. Yes, that's what it is. Yes. Goat yoga, which is very strange. Cat yoga is very hard, which is, if anyone doesn't know what cat yoga is, that's trying to do yoga when you have a cat. Chud thinks I'm dying and gets very upset and wants to go sit under me and purr because she's worried that I'm, like, contorting for some broken reason. And everybody else just wants to, like, run back and forth beneath you. So you're like, all right, I'm trying to time my breath with this downward dog and cobra pose thing, and you guys are screwing up my rhythm. I'm using all the chats, in case, Fifth Dimension, because on the sites that I use, it kind of puts them all together for the most part. Obviously, Twitter isn't in here, even though we're streaming live on Twitter as well. So, but I've been doing. I'm modifying my workouts because I'm 52 now. So I'm trying to build a plan for myself. The goal for myself is aesthetic functional strength year-round. That it is pleasing to the eye and useful all the time. All year round, not just summer body, not just, which has double meaning in my life, of course, not just, strength for strength's sake, and looking like a barrel with, on toothpicks or something like that. But for myself, what my goal is aesthetic functional strength year round. And with that, aesthetic functional health year round, because hopefully they will be integrated. That's, and that, you guys know I do my my goals on my birthday every year. This is part of my 52nd year, the plan I have for myself. And so far, working pretty well. Yeah. We appreciate the aesthetics. Well, I hope so. You don't look 52, you look like you're in your 30s. Well, thank you. That actually has more to do with what a lot of people in their 30s look like right now than what I look like. Sadly. Right now, people in their 20s and 30s, especially in the United States, look a mess. Their diets are shit. They don't take care of themselves. They don't work out the way they need to. And if they do work out a lot, like they're into, CrossFit or something like that, they spend way too much time in the sun. So these combinations are not positive. And a lot of awful, food choices. So, yeah. Powerlifter set state records when I was 50, still at it. Nice, Franken Smithberry. Very impressive. How you look so young. Is it positivity? Part of it, yeah. Optimism absolutely keeps you young. People in their 20s look like my dad. I know. It's super strange. You're fasting today? That's great. Yeah. Heat wipes me out. Well, yeah. Thanks, Drew. I appreciate that. Yes, you do have control. You have more control over yourself than people tell you do. And there are entire industries trying to convince you have less control over yourself. And I think there seem to be like two tracks right now in terms of health, which is bioexpansionism on a pharmaceutical level, meaning that like do whatever you want, and then when something breaks, the doc will fix it. And the anti-vax, I'll just whip up some concoction of my own, and then I'll live like on a caveman diet or something separate from the reality that people in those days lived to be 32 and died horribly. And I believe, in many ways, as the Buddha would say, there is a middle way in that you both have access to incredible medical advances in modern life. And the goal is keep yourself healthy so you don't need them. Do everything you possibly can to better your health and treat your body with the respect it deserves. Oh, yeah, happy Thanksgiving Day for Canada. That's right. It's today is Canadian Thanksgiving, which is fantastic. They eat you guys don't eat turkey, you eat a loon. And it's deep fried too, right? Deep fried, French fried loon is what you eat for Canadian Thanksgiving. And then poutine if you're in Quebec. But in all seriousness, there is on sort of both sides of that extremity a total disrespect for your responsibility for your own health that's been riding around for a long time. That it's one of the reasons why we have an obesity epidemic in the United States, and it's not healthy at all. And there are people who can't help but have that kind of weight on them, and they are a much smaller portion of society than has that extra weight. And that extra weight adds all kinds of very damaging long-term effects to your health and your well-being. And we have to get away from the zone of like giving people good advice about that or pushing people towards more healthy choices is somehow shaming them or something like that. That's not the case at all. It's and you could argue that there are a lot of responsibility for some COVID deaths that we've had in this country, and a decent number of them on what would effectively be known as the body positivity movement from a couple of years ago that was gaining steam right up till COVID, and is a horribly unhealthy movement because it isn't body positivity. It's that's a euphemism of the worst order. Body positivity would be do the best with what you got and really make that effort to take care of yourself. And instead of like, oh, hell with it. I'll do my thing like a 15-year-old who's, running away from home. What is the fattest nation? The fastest nation? Did you mean fattest? We are, by the way, not necessarily the fattest nation. We used to be, we were headed towards it, but, there are a lot of other countries that are going through this. Spain has an issue with obesity, and so does Italy. And areas where longevity wasn't necessarily a factor for them have become an issue over time, not just because of COVID, but because the extra body weight didn't come from more natural sources, and in like Italy, like the pasta and the olive oil and good heart health from the tomatoes and stuff that they ate, but more processed foods, and over time that contributed to a higher death rate from it. Mississippi is the fattest nation, right? But yeah, the UK has an incredible problem with it right now, and the reality is that people, whatever anybody tells you about what you have control over, you have more control than even they know. And this is from somebody who believes in you. I just feel like people need to be told that more, that you have more control than people tell you. If you have, and I think a lot of it comes from people just afraid to, when somebody does desperately need help, when they are broken, they don't want them to be afraid to say it and get help. And so we overcorrect to protect those people, and rightly so. And there's a lot of people that in the mishmash of that start leaning towards the I'm broken in only a way that, a shrink or medication or whatever will help, as opposed to I have the ability to shore myself up in this situation, do what I know is possible, even at effectively my lowest points. That I wouldn't confuse my lowest points as a healthful person with the lowest points of someone who is genuinely going through something that they cannot get out on their own. And because we are so concerned in our society for those that cannot, and rightly so, that cannot get out on their own, we create the illusion that there are more of those people than there actually are. And a lot of people get softly led into the idea, well, you may not be in total need of it, but you certainly need a little of it. I mean, New York is full of that. New York is, everybody's got to shrink, it seems like. And at a certain point, yes, there are portions of people who need it. There's also a bunch of people who are just bitching about their lives and they just want a sounding board for it, and it doesn't do anything for them ultimately. It just becomes another habit. 8 years ago, I worked through a bad flu. It damaged my heart irreparably. I'm an idiot. Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I know I've lost weight during the pandemic, mostly because of food prices lately. Well, there's an argument that cheap processed food is part of the problem. And ultimately, there are, like, some fast food is so damn cheap that no one is lacking in the calories they need. Almost no one. Even the places where we call them, the potential for food deserts or food insecurity, for example. And I'm not one of these people that believes that all calories are the same. But as far as like having enough calories for your system, your body to run and function, as opposed to starvation, almost no one in the United States experiences that. That isn't, by the way, a child with a parent who is totally irresponsible. Yes, bad. That's the unfortunate part. Bad food is cheap because, in many ways, farm subsidies that we've been doing have been on commodity crops, and commodity crops are what we use to make high fructose corn syrup and sort of filler food, and instead of a more diversified crop. House Sparks, a lot of fast food is rated less than dog food. Yes, I've always said that Taco Bell is cat food for humans, and it really does apply to almost everything. We need to take all mental health issues seriously. I am. And one of the ways I take things seriously is by not taking them too seriously. Right? If you have a slight cut, you want to clean it, put a Band-Aid on it, make sure it gets, you put some Neosporin on it, and you deal with it so it can heal so it doesn't get infected. Right? But you also don't want to pretend that everything is a stab wound to the gut that barely missed your aorta. And if you treat every cut that you have like that, then that is taking it too seriously, and it is damaging to your body. You'll be on antibiotics all the time. You'll be, constantly running up medical bills you don't need to run up, and you'll be under this impression that every cut will be your last. If you're not a hemophiliac, there's no reason to do that. And a lot of people, when we talk about mental health issues, it's a possibility, take them too seriously and categorize them at a deeper level than they actually are, therefore giving them more weight than they would have instead of something you just can and need to work on yourself. There's a difference. There has to be a difference. We all know there's a difference. Pretending there isn't a difference is actually more damaging, I think. And so what happens is a society that doesn't give a shit about mental health sometimes can overcorrect, and the truth is in the middle somewhere. And I think people can tell the difference, and increasingly should. Alucius says Woody Allen syndrome. Yeah, that it becomes hip, essentially. When in response to a trauma, it's a long road back. No question. You can't believe the amount of sugar that's in food that you do not expect. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, you eventually become antibiotic resistant, right? You have to recognize that especially when it's highly processed food, like the amount of stuff you're taking in, it stacks. Like this again, sodium content in our diet is largely not a result of salt that people are putting on their food. People salting their food is not the main culprit in the amount of sodium people are taking into their body. It's in the processed food in a way that you don't even taste. They use it as a preservative, and then they have to sugar up the food to cover the taste of how much salt is in it to preserve it. Yeah. We all have our unique version of the word truth. Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I think, Albert Pike said, we're all everyone is welcome to their own unique mistake. Try to make everything from scratch. Wow, you must have a crazy house. Meat is supposed to not be good either. Well, no, that's not necessarily true either. Again, it's about processing how you cook it and how much. Balance is the goal in a healthy life in all aspects. Indeed, as much as you possibly can. And the recognition in that of that balance is having value. I saw somebody on the local news last night say that some of the mentally ill should be what? Should be involuntarily committed. And I think he's right. It should be some should not be on the streets. Yeah, if someone has the inability to care for themselves, no question. As a society, one would want to make sure they are taken care of, not just leave them on the street to the elements or to disease or to be acted upon by the baser people in our society that are in control of their faculties to a slightly higher degree, right? There is nothing homeless friendly about leaving people who are mentally ill out on the street because you're honoring their dignity of not being hassled by the police or something. That we need to have some place for them to go. And this is all left over from Reagan shutting the mental institutions. And we need a better way of caring for them. Your food should come from within 100 miles of where you live. As long as 100 miles, like you're not in a place where you're like, I wouldn't eat any of the food around here for at least 100 miles. And if you're in San Antonio, Texas, like, I'm not sure I would eat any of this shit. Ship something in. I'm ordering Postmates from Oklahoma. Red meat is an acetic food. Cancer thrives on acetic food. Yes, but there's also your body is a balance of acetic and alkaline. Diet is so horrible. I should actually look my age. Yes, Hawaii would be screwed, right? If I eat one more fish or pineapple, I'm gonna barf. Trisha says, I was homeless 4 years ago. Well, I'm glad you are no longer. And again, that's a distinct difference between, I think, where the path you were on and the circumstance you found yourself in. And I'm sure some of the people you interacted with that were never going to have a chance at getting their life together because their brain does not have the ability to do so. And that is a wholly different category of human. And our collective societal sympathy and empathy for people who find themselves on the street because they've slipped through the cracks or had a huge medical bills, like had huge medical bills pile up, or some other circumstance that has left them there, even even addiction, is wholly different than people who are, is homeless or apartmentless. Well, that was the gag I had for years, radio. Is wholly different. These are two separate things. As are the street campers in Los Angeles. A lot of the folks that have tents, they're not homeless. They are, a lot of them are choosing this lifestyle. Some of them even have houses that they go to. They're basically like little drug satellites where they sell drugs on the street or engage in other stuff. And so making a distinction between people who involuntarily find themselves homeless, genuinely without a place to stay, and the city or the state can provide help and encouragement for that. People who are mentally ill, who cannot ever hope to be in control of their situation, even when medicated. And then, of course, people who are taking advantage of the circumstance where society cares about those two groups of people to just use up resources, live off the resources meant for homeless people, is effectively the three categories we deal with all the time, especially in Los Angeles. And I now live in a sober house. It's basically considered homeless with a roof. But there's a huge difference between homeless without a roof and homeless with a roof, And I'm glad you're on that path, and we're glad that you're working on your sobriety as well. But again, I think you'd be aware that there's a very big distinction between where you find yourself and people whom for which sobriety will never be an option, because their mental illness, their circumstance is far too deep, pathological, and physical to where their brains are never going to work right. Hey, Hal, just bought a bass, learning to play it. Any advice? Yes. Play all the time. Learn your favorite songs. Scales are important and good technique are important, but pick some songs you love or some riffs you love and work on those, because that was one of the things that made me a better guitar player faster, was learning to play riffs that I wanted to feel, and that goes through there. Yeah, that going through your body is a really great feeling. Yes, and play it loud, right? Life handed me some good cars, not rich, but always thankful. Yes. Oh, thank you. Oh, my gosh, Aggie. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. And again, I come from the point of view that, if you've been through stuff and you've found yourself on the upside of it, or if you've lived some sort of privileged life where you never really, were thrown up against a wall. I don't know anybody personally who has lived a life like that, but I'm sure they exist. Not only do you have a responsibility to recognize that fact, that you're in a better position and you can help out, but you also owe it to the people, who are not in that position, to enjoy your life, to find the joy in life, to live the joy in life, to be an inspiration, going, you know what, if I get my shit together, that's not out of the realm of possibility for me. It's inspiring. You have a responsibility to be inspiring with everything that you can. Universal basic income? No. Especially not in places like Los Angeles. I mean, you can pilot it in some small towns or something like that, but in a big city, it's a recipe for inflation. It's just, they're just going to eat it up. Like everybody, somebody's going to raise the rent. We're giving $1,000. Unless you create, you have like citywide rent control before you implant it, before you put it in place. It's just going to be gone. It'll just be gone. So that's my problem with it. It's just a recipe for inflation, because everybody will, make up that cash. Like I get that it can be helpful to some people. And again, if it's universal, that's the difference between it being universal or just given to people under a certain point. But the resentment driven by people who are just struggling to stay lower middle class, and people who are below that line who just get $1,000 a month all of a sudden would be, it would have catastrophic consequences across the board. Just got sad during COVID on my own, ended up lazy more than ever in my life. Sometimes it's just a lot to bear. It's a crazy thing, and there's a lot of stress and anxiety in it. A lot of folks, there's a lot to worry about in life, on your own, in your own life. life shit happens. You have relatives and friends and relationships and work and your own health and your relatives' health and your friends' health and all that stuff. That's enough to deal with. And then on top of it, a worldwide pandemic that everyone tells you is going to be the end of the earth. And, again, it's why I do what I do. It's why I will continue to do what I do, to constantly remind people that there's a bigger experience out there and that not everything has to be a source of anxiety in your life. And you need to breathe deep. You need to take all this stuff with a grain of salt, all of life with a grain of salt, not just because it's true, not just because, all the anxiety you see all over the news is not going to affect you directly as much as you might think it would, and as much as they would like you to think it would, but also because the less anxious life makes you and the more perspective you have and the more control you have over it, the more useful you become if shit really does hit the fan. Right? Because that's what you want, right? No one wants to be the person cowering in the corner when the shit hits the fan. You want to be the person who can help. Yeah. And we're happy you're here with us too, Tricia. Yeah. We're very glad you're here. Still shaking after picking hubby up from treatment. Guy was revving his engine, whipping in and out of traffic, honking, flipping the bird, generally screaming at the world. Those people occur. Thank you, Frank and Smithberry. Almost forgot to do this. Damn, your interesting, immersive discussions out. Thanks. And watch your back and your shoulders and your elbows if you're going to be doing powerlifting. But I trust that you've probably built up enough cartilage over time and sinew to protect yourself against it. You sound like a pro. Well, thanks, Tricia. We love you too. But I have to remind everybody that, because sometimes I think people just get myopic about their worth in the world, and, how they feel in the world and how the world makes them feel. And without recognizing that whatever you're feeling, there's a lot of other people out there feeling the same way. And if you focused a little bit more on, like if somebody walked into your house and they were basically feeling the exact same way you were feeling. You're miserable, they're miserable. But they were really, like they were, 2 degrees more freaked out than you are. 2 degrees more miserable than you are. Your reaction to them would not be commiseration. It would be comfort. You go, you know what, it's not that bad. And here, have a cup of tea and let's talk about it and you're going to be all right. And that that would be your reflex. One would hope in general. Most people that would be their reflex if they were raised well. So why is that not part of your reflex with yourself when you find yourself anxious, miserable, or shaken? That same level of like charitable work. Right? Because you wouldn't just go, just lay down and bitch about this for a little while. I'll get you something to drink and you can just watch TV and forget about it. You go, anything I can do? So why, you take their mind off it a little bit, you cheer them up a little bit, and then you say, anything I can do. Getting active about the solution for them most of the time after hearing them through and all that stuff. So why wouldn't you do that for yourself when you're having these anxious moments? And you do it, and you go, at least have that moment of anything I can do. How about let's make a list? What would you do with that friend? Let's make a list. What could we do if we just wanted to get out of this, get away from it, fix it, solve it long term, fix it in the short term, find some, way to, if it can't avoid it entirely, how do we minimize the negative and maximize the positive? All that stuff, right? You would do that for somebody else. So, one of my favorite movies is Defending Your Life. Always loved it. And there's a scene in it where Rip Torn is talking to Albert Brooks, and he goes, did you give a lot to charity? And Albert Brooks is like, what do you mean by a lot? Like, I gave a lot to people on the street, but they don't really give you a receipt. How much should I be? how much should I give? What's the total? And he goes, no, I don't worry about it. He goes, but there was somebody that you were really cheap with over and over and over again. He goes, who? And he goes, you. And yeah, just pretend you're your friend. Exactly. And it is one of those, that's one of those moments. And I that's, by the way, part of my practice. If I find myself in a state of overwhelm, I cut myself a little bit of slack, have a glass of water or a cup of tea, fix myself something. Maybe it's, hunger or dehydration. Again, hunger is anger. Anger is hunger. Sadness is dehydration. I've explained that before, but that's the long and short of it. If you're sad, drink more water. If you're angry, go eat something. But do that little bit for yourself, and then make a list. Just make a list. Write down, any solutions. And the first one could be there isn't one. That's fine. Write it down. Okay, if there was one, what would it be? Okay, if there was a big solution that would solve the whole thing, winning the lottery, blah, 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 write that down too. Just write it down for fun. Just write it down. Don't worry about it. It doesn't have to work out. You're giving yourself as many options as possible in this scenario. And then, go through the real root cause of whatever the problem is, whatever the circumstance is, whatever the feeling is. And you're going to go, there's either a material solution or there isn't. There's an emotional solution or there isn't. Or we just got to ride out the storm. What's the best way to ride out the storm? Because life is gigantic. And those are the moments where people tend to forget how big life is. And your whole life starts to bottleneck through this one particular period of time or this circumstance or this ill-fated thing that occurs. And then most of the time after it's passed, it seems impossible when you're on the other side of it. When in the middle, it seemed like there was nothing else in the whole world. And so remembering that there's a whole world out there is a great way to bring, potential hope and optimism and solutions into the circumference of the things that you can do something about. Thanks, Victoria. I try. She says, you are my new therapy. You are your new therapy. Notice the small things. Absolutely. But I would also say, Sean, notice the gigantic things. Pods of whales and the movements of the stars. Clouds above and how, the teeming rivers. Narwhals giving birth and the great human migration across the planet. Not to feel insignificant, but to feel part of something so teeming with life. And recognize that they all, go through that stuff. Andy says, suffered a car accident in August 2019. Actually, I was minding my own business and out of nowhere, a crazy lady crashed head onto me. Oy. 2 broken legs, busted hip, broken thumb, collapsed lung, punctured liver, tons of trauma. After all this, I'm thankful to be alive. I live life as if it were my last. Yeah, I'm still recovering, and God bless me with the ability to walk. Thank you for your show. Keep it up. Absolutely, Andy. And that's how it has to be. When I broke my finger, this is my fretting hand for playing guitar, and I was just sort of getting into what my guitar playing sounds like, getting past technique to style. And then I go and break my ring finger, the bending finger, the one finger you use most often to bend and put emotion in notes. And instantly, truth be told, when I broke this finger, and I went to the doctor and yeah, that's a hairline fracture. You're going to need some screws in that thing. It might not bend ever again. It might stick up like this. They were telling me it might get stuck like that. It doesn't. Thank you, acupuncture. But when they told me that it might just stay like this forever, I was like, okay, I'm a 3-fingered guitar player now. If that's how it is, that's how it is. That's how life is. I could bitch about it. It's not going to change the shape of my finger. I'll do what I can. You know? Hi, Hal. I'm surprised you never bring up the Dunning-Kruger effect. I think it's overused as an argument and against things on the internet. I think people jump to, naming things almost as much as they bring up Orwell in 1984 and that kind of stuff. Looks like a trigger finger, exactly. But I just made a decision at that point that if I have to learn to play guitar just using these 3 fingers and this thing just kind of sticks up, sorry, that's life. Django Reinhardt had 2 fingers. One of the most amazing guitar players that ever existed. So, yeah. Yeah, Rick Allen lost his arm and still plays the drums. Right. So, are there bigger, more insurmountable things? Yeah. Are there some things that make your world come crashing down for a time? Absolutely. And in those moments, it is best to absorb those things and deal with them as they are. Not how you wish they should be or how you hope they would be different, but how they are in that moment, how they really are. And if that involves sorrow, if that involves, genuine anger, that's how it should play out. So, but anything short of that, we should never pretend that it is that. And that's always my, do you hear from Jesus or deity about what's the next step of your life? No, I do invocational prayers when I'm about to do something important. That I do a prayer that that what I'm doing works out the best for everyone involved. Those kind of things. But not tell me how this is going to work out. Like, that seems like superstitious fortune teller stuff. And I like my life to be a life, not paint by numbers or something. So yeah, we're still alive. Hi. What about karma? Karma's a multi-life thing. Don't concern yourself with it, especially for other people. You can be concerned about your own. If you believe karma is, the karmic wheel is important and it informs your behavior and makes you act better in the world, use it. But if you're going, I hope karma hits that person, that has nothing to do with them. That's you. And that wish, in a way, sets you back on the karmic wheel. So karma itself is, is about someone's penance in the next life. And you don't have a part in that. You play the part in this life. Karma is a chameleon. Totally. Even if you're mean and evil does not necessarily mean that your karmic debt is going to be paid in this life. Pol Pot died in his bed. Well, I'm glad you're still going, Lisa. And I know a lot of people who have similar stories, where it just, everything comes crashing down. And out of respect for those people, and having gone through moments like that myself, that are just, that literally you feel like your cells are dividing inside your body, and your world is coming apart. Like, having had those moments in my life, and I have a respect for them, in a way that informs how I react to normal challenges in life without getting Pol Pot died in their bed. Horrible murderer, dictator. Lots of those folks, die that way. All we are is dust in the wind. I disagree, Tracy. I think we're more than that. I think our bodies might be dust in the wind, but I like the song, though. What about Jesus? I think it would behoove Christians to cling to the words said by the man and not words that other people said he said. The direct quotes in the early parts of the Gospels, as opposed to, Paul's translations of what he really thought. He sort of said something like this. Yeah. Jesus is just all right, man. Yeah. Same old song. Right. Jesus even says that, Al, exactly, right? Pass before my eyes a curiosity. Yeah. Paul was a slaver who never met Jesus in person. Exactly. And he's also the most cited in evangelical circles in terms of the Bible verses that they cling to. So that's very telling. Jesus Built My Hot Rod is one of my favorite ministry songs. How do we really know what he said? Well, obviously faith plays a part in it, your own belief in that. But the idea is that I think if you look to the purity of certain ideas, the forgiveness, turning the other cheek, love thy neighbor as thyself. Those kind of things are high level ethical and moral statements that seem more in line with something that is has a sense of spiritual permanence. Faith and belief that individuals have in God and Jesus gives hope. Yeah. Most church songs suck. It depends. I'm a Striper fan. To hell with the devil! Thank you for your insightful reflection. Thank you, Aggie. Absolutely. Someone says they're an atheist. I am not an atheist myself. Definitely not. I went to high school with a lot of Striper fans. Nice. I saw him live a couple of times. I love the inclusive Episcopal Church, can't stand conservatism. Yeah, well, let's, virgin birth, rise from the dead analogy. Yes, or a misreading of historical text, or the borrowing of it, or the Congress of Nicaea piecing together multiple people and trying to make them into one coherent being for the sake of the superstitiously religious, as opposed to people who believe in a life beyond this world. Petra was your favorite group. That's awesome. She finds I had we know some people from Petra, actually. My dad does. I'm a whatever floats your boat is. Nah, I'm not a whatever floats your boat is. If you're a Nazi or a cannibal or no, I'm not flying with that. Agnosticism is listening to all faiths to some degree. I'm a non-believer. I do not go to church. I'm not a non-believer. I do not go to church, though. Yeah, that's not required. I mean, I think it's interesting how much labeling has become an integral part of our humanity lately, especially in the conversations around gender and politics. People are just fighting for an ever finer and finer slice of some particular label, and it comes across as like being how some people talk about whether they're a sports fan or comic books or something like that. and it's almost spoken around about with the same seriousness. I met Josh Todd from Buckcherry. I have too. I was at his wedding. His wife was in Dude, Where's My Car? And yeah. Mean people suck. I don't know. Sometimes they're great to contrast, so you know you're doing it right. You know? Jesus is the church. Yeah, in theological theory, yeah, absolutely. Not all churches, though, would be. Are they all equal? Are they all equal in that expression? My religion just trying not to be an asshole, right? They cherry pick the Bible. Well, yeah. I mean, who's the they, though? Again, that's where you get into the guided hand zone. I got a new job at a psych facility. My first. Oh, thank you. Susanna, thanks so much. And I'm glad you got a job there. My mom worked at a psych facility. And that it wore on her. It was work. So bless you for doing that work. Y'all see that goofball that got a tattoo of Donnie on his back? That's not surprising. I mean, Roger Stone has a Nixon tattoo. Here's the thing, and you know, I'm a fan of. I'll let you guys go because I've been on longer than normal because I started longer. But I go to I check out like Raw Story a lot, which is a kind of an aggregate site. It's another barrel edition site like a Huffington Post where they borrow everyone else's news stories and pretend that it's theirs. And then try to sell advertising on, hey, there's this story. I don't know if you saw this story. You can always tell any websites like that because they always say, this happened and this happened according to new report. Well, according to new report is a reporter in a legit paper wrote an article about it, and they're just citing it. And Raw Story can be fun, and sometimes they can be assholes, and they're all run by atheists. We've run, I've run afoul of them a couple of times. Because of how they shit talk. It's one thing to shit talk certain religions or the mechanics of certain religions that try to control their people, but when you shit talk people's faith, that's where I draw the line, and I think it's unnecessarily cruel and a waste of time. But they do it sometimes. And the other thing they do is, it's really ham-handed, is that if there's a murder that a white person kills somebody, they'll say white man, blah 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 blah. But if it's any other race, they'll leave the race out. And the unfortunate part is what that tacitly says is that that's the norm, that whatever that race is that they're leaving out, and usually it's black people, if they leave that out, while they're trying to hide or slow walk that piece of information because they think it paints them in a bad light, what they're doing is painting black people in a bad light, saying, A, that most murders are them, so we hate to bring it up because it draws too much attention to it. And B, that everybody, that white people and everybody else are so racist that they can't tell the difference between a criminal black person and your average black person, when anybody with an eye for statistics knows the difference. And it's unfair and sort of racist to instantly go, when I see a criminal, I don't immediately go, what do they share in traits with other people of their race? I just see somebody who did something awful. You know what I mean? Whereas they seem to go, oh no, we have to stop talking about this because people will think they're all the same. And then that way they say these people are all the same. It's not good. It's not healthy. Happy 44th birthday, Serena. Never know what nuggets of wisdom you provide. Thank you. Absolutely. My pleasure. But anyways, so... where was I? We get on this whole side note with Raw Story and like sort of the aggregate news sites. But, they tend to do a lot of like single study horror stories. A new study comes out and says this, and it's always the worst of the worst. And then, of course, we often talk about how if somebody gives you a statistic, you want the actual number, and if they give you the actual number, you want the statistic. Like, This has gone up 300%. Well, how many were there? 2. So there's been 6? Yeah. How many people in the city? About 4 million? Okay, then fuck off with this 300% nonsense. Calm yourself. If it becomes a rampant problem, we'll deal with it as such, but we need to deal with it on an individual basis if it's at that scale. Stop it. And the same thing goes true with single-use studies. They're unhealthy, and what you want in those situations is a peer-reviewed study. Peer-reviewed studies show that, and that's, I think, where the misinfo on Facebook and a lot of these sites kind of crisscrosses and creates this, misinfo, disinfo mashup. And yes. And so I think what I'll leave everybody with on this one is that anytime you see one of these news study things, wait until you can find a peer-reviewed version of it. Just, add that to your repertoire of dealing with things when you see it online. A new study said that this is a poll shows, well, unless all the polls show, I don't want to hear it because I don't know how they phrase the question, and I'm not going to be talked into liking or not liking something because of how other people like or don't like something when the question that was presented to them in the poll might be completely phrased differently in every single version of the poll about, whether Texas should secede or whether the reconciliation bill is, got value or people know what's in it or don't know what's in it, any of that stuff. I just won't let it stand. Can't do it. So anyways, I'm going to sign off. Just put a pin in that and I will talk to you guys later on today for the regular show. We'll do the Trump rally as much as we can stomach. and I want you to go into this afternoon with, I'm not going to swipe away all the fear and anxiety you might have about life, but shave 10% off for me. Just at 3 p.m. Pacific. So just in a couple of hours, I'm going to go eat something and clean up and do a little tech here so that I can actually run the show normally or abnormally. See if I can fix all the tech issues that we can have, at least for that show. Thanks, Lisa. And again, all I can do and all I'm ever going to do is ask you to just try and, in these situations, when you have your wits about you, when you regain your wits, when something's been off or you're in a circumstance, and it will come back. Your wits will snap back to you in a second. In that moment of clarity, go, okay, how do I shave 10% off of this awful or this circumstance so that I can get my functioning abilities back? And you'll find it. You will find it. It's there. It's inside you. If you have the capability of that thought, you have the capability. This is me believing in you. So, all right, I'm going to let you guys go. I will sign off and for real. This always gets to be a long goodbye. And I will see you guys at 3 p.m. Pacific time for Hal Sparks Megaworldwide, the afternoon show. And we'll have some fun at Trump's expense. And we will refuse to take inserious people seriously. It's a calling. I have got to do it. I'm a young man. I've got prospects. All right. Anybody know where that movie is from? Think about it, and tell me later on at 3:00. I've got prospects. All right. Cheers. See you later. Bye. Bye, guys.